Hello aspirants, welcome to PW OnlyIAS English channel. I am here Harpreet Singh with the daily analysis of the Hindu from 24th September 2024. Let's see what we are going to analyze today. These are the news articles that we are going to analyze today. Tirupati Laddu and adulteration related to that. Concept of secularism. Transit-oriented development. An editorial that deals with business with China and the Indian business relationships with China and Chinese business relationship with India and the various issues associated with that. Let's begin with today's analysis. Now, we realized over here that this article has been in news with respect to the adulteration of the holy prasad, that is laddu over here, where we see the issue of adulteration of ghee with a cheaper vegetable oil and even animal fat has been found by the laboratories. Now see, this undermines the authenticity and purity. That is why it is not only an issue with respect to the religious and the belief system, it is also very important with respect to the adulteration laws and the food safety. When we are reading about this article, yes, investigation has been taking place with respect to whether the religious sentiments have been hurt, that is fine. But along with it, it is also important that it is a matter of food adulteration and food safety. So from the perspective of civil services, when you're talking about, we need to understand what adulteration is and what are the laws or dimensions that are present that is provided by the, let us say, the various legal system in a country, and how to address them. That is very, very important that we need to address from this particular article. Now let's understand what is the meaning of adulteration. Now please see, the Prevention of Food Adulteration Act 1954 defines adulteration as a replacement of a food substance by a low grade or inexpensive material, rendering it injurious to health. Now, this is what is the official definition of adulteration. Now, when you're preparing for civil services, please remember the question would most probably, with respect to this particular topic, can be asked with respect to food adulteration. So, let us move on to the new act that provides or defines what food adulteration is, what are the various dimensions and bodies set up under that particular act. Let's see. See, there is a Food Safety and Standards Act 2006. Now, we need to know briefly about the provisions of this act, because in the examination, this topic can be asked with respect to briefly describe the Food Safety and Standard Acts. What are the various provisions that have been provided in order to control the food safety and adulteration in India? That can come for 10 or 15 marks. Let's see. It empowered the central government to frame rules under the act to deal with the several aspects relating to regulation of food safety. This is the major objective which this act is fulfilling. Now let's understand. FSSAI. Now what is it? The act establishes Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, which supervises and regulates food safety and standards. So this is a body basically working towards standardization of what the standards of food quality should be, and which has to be followed by various organizations who are involved in the food business. For that matter, restaurants, bakeries, various FMGC's companies which are related to food. So these are basically the body which regulates it. Now, as we move ahead, we see the concept of food commissioners. Now, this act provides that the state government to appoints commissioners of food safety who will be observing and seeing and making sure that the food quality that is available in their state is of the standard that is approved by the FSSAI. Now, he is the person who will be responsible for maintenance of the standards that the companies there, the restaurants there, the bakeries there, and so many other organizations which are related to the food industry follow the norms and standards. Next is food safety officers. The food commissioner is authorized to appoint food safety officers for each district. For each district, you will be having a food safety officer, which is going to be appointed by the food commissioner. Now, at the district level also, you will be having these officers who have to make sure that the food safety is maintained and up to the mark as given by the FSSAI, the standards. Licensing. The Act prohibits any person to operate any food business without a license from the designated officers. Now you would be saying, sir, why licensing is important? See, that brings you under the purview that your standard or the food basically meets the standard of what is expected from you. In case it does not, then you will be penalized heavily and possibly a closure of your, let us say, workshop, or let us say a bakery, or whatever business you're involved, that action can be taken. Because remember, adulteration of food, misuse of the power with respect to your selling something and using it, replacing it with cheap quality, using certain material which might hurt the religious sentiments, all those things become very, very important with respect to the food security and also with respect to the societal dimension, as we have seen in the temple of Tirupati ji also, where adulteration was made with respect to animal fat presence also being there. So this is again a very, very important dimension of the structural aspect. Now, when we studied that particular topic, please remember, with respect to adulteration, UPSC is not going to ask you that what was found in the laddu or not. That is something we keep on reading in the current affairs. What UPSC wants to ask you is that, okay, there is an issue that is being worked or being investigated. Now, what are the provisions that were there, which was there in order to that thing should not happen, or what were the provisions that should have been followed? So that is where this particular act becomes very, very important, and you should know the provisions. And this is what was the important topic with respect to civil services. Now, coming to the next topic, that is the concept of secularism. Now, this is very, very important from the perspective of your general studies paper 2. Even paper 1, the concept of secularism can be asked in the society part. Along with it, if they want to ask, they can ask you in the ethics part also. So we need to understand over here very categorically. Now, the secularism European concept introduced during emergency. This is stated by the governor. For us, we need to understand the concept deeply, what it basically means. Firstly, as it has been mentioned that it was introduced during the emergency time, so we need to understand that the word secularism itself was not directly mentioned in the constitution originally, right? Originally, it was not mentioned. The word was added to our constitution by the 42nd Constitutional Amendment Act of 1976. That means during the emergency time. But this does not mean that our constitution was not secular in nature. But to understand the concept of secularism in what this article connotes, we need to understand what secularism means, right? Now, let's move ahead and understand that. Please understand. The word, when I talk about a particular country is a secular country, right? From a political construct or political ideology, please remember, if the country does not have a state religion, it will be connoted or denoted as a secular country implicitly. How? Supposingly, when you realize when you see Pakistan, it has adopted Islam as its state religion. So it is not a secular country because it has a state religion. On the other hand, if we see countries like India, United States, France, they do not have a state religion. That is why they are considered as secular countries. Now, when we talk about secular countries, also we need to understand that the relationship we are talking about, that is the state and the religion, varies a lot. The first thing is someone or some country is secular or not will depend upon the fact that whether it has a state religion or not. If it has a state religion, like Pakistan has Islam as its state religion, it is not a secular country. That means there is little bit of favor towards one particular religion, right? In our country, we do not have a state religion, nor does France, nor does US, and so on and so forth. So those countries are secular countries. But when we talk about secular countries also, we need to understand one thing. When we talk about secularism, we deal with the relationship between the state and the religion. The state and the religion. Understand this very carefully. When we see, let us take the example of France and let us take the example of India. Both do not have a state religion. Both are secular countries. But do you realize the relationship between the state and the religion is same in India and France? No. That is why we realize that the Western countries have the concept of secularism that is very different from the concept of secularism that we have in India, right? So that is why the article mentions about that the concept of secularism that is prevalent or read in the political construct is different from the European concept when we compare it with the Indian concepts. So that is why over here, let us see how the Indian secularism concept is different from the Western secularism concept. Let's see. See, when we talk about Western secularism, let us take the example of France for that matter. Let us take the example of France. Why I'm taking the example of France is that this definition of Western secularism is more applicable to France. Earlier, it was applicable to United States and other countries also, but because of a lot of migration, this thing has been diluted in United States. So it is more of a accommodative nature in United States, but in France, still the concept we are defining here is more or less valid. Now let's understand. Western secularism emphasizes on a strict separation between the state and the religion. That means the state, that means the government structure has its own functions, the religion has its own function. Both don't need to meddle with each other, both don't need to interact or interfere in each other's works. Particularly, the religion should not intervene in the state activities. So that means there is a strict separation between the state functioning and the religious functioning, right? This is the Western secularism concept. In spite of the fact not having a state religion, this is also variations of secularism. So Western concept separates both things, or there's a lot of distance between them. On the other hand, when I talk about Indian secularism, we do not see a strict separation between religion and the state. Though there is separation, obviously, but strict separation is not there. What does Indian secularism come from, or what is the ideology behind Indian secularism? The ideology behind Indian secularism is dharma nirpekshta, that means separation of state from the religion. That is fine, but no strict separation. Next is sarva dharma sambhava, that means equal respect to all the religions by the state. Now, this is something that doesn't come in the Western secularism because they strictly separate religion from the state, right? Now, second is state does not give aid to the religious bodies and institutions. Now, the government structure is not going to give grants and aids to religious bodies and organizations. Why? Because there is strict separation between religion and state. The religion matter is something you carry on your own. State is something that they will carry on their own. We are no one to give aid to the religious institutions or bodies. But on the other hand, when we come to India, we realize that here the state may provide aid. Definitely, the state provides aid to the religious bodies also and organizations also, right? But please remember, in case of India also, there is a concept of principled distance. That means if the nation is doing something for one religion, it will have to do for other religions also. That means for India, all religions are equally placed, right? So that is concept of principled distance. Next is public display of religion is generally prohibited. You will be realizing in France, issues with respect to burqa wearing or even turban wearing by the Sikh people were repeatedly used because they believe that this is representation of your religion in the public places. That is why Western secularism separates religion and state system differently. So they tell that you do not have to exhibit your religion or religious identity in front of the public. That is why public display of religion is generally prohibited. On the other hand, in India, it is completely allowed. Under Article 25 also, 26 also, you can easily practice, profess your religion freely and openly, right? Though religious conversion is not allowed, but practice and profession of your religion is completely allowed in India. So this is the difference between the Western secularism and the Indian secularism. Now the question comes, the word secularism was added in the Constitution of India. Does it mean that secularism was not there in spirit in the Constitution? No, it was already there because our secularism is different from that of the Western secularism. We realize this because it is something that has been there from thousands and thousands of years, where we tend to see religion as a guiding tool, where the word dharma comes, where dharma basically means the righteous path. So religion has had a guiding stick or has been a guiding stick for even the state. That is why in India, where we have diversity of religions, we cannot have a very strict policy of separation where we see in the Western countries. Earlier on, this strictness used to be even more rigid for the reason behind there was only majorly one religion, that is Christianity, which used to dominate the Western countries. But as we see more and more migration is taking place, so obviously difference or changes in the policies are also taking place. Now let's move forward and understand something. The constitutional provisions, even before the word secularism was added in our constitution, already has Article 14, Article 16(1), Article 25, Article 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 51, etc. These basically itself denote the secular aspects or represent the secular aspect of a country. Now, along with it, we need to understand even before the constitution was amended and the aspect of secularism was added as a word, we see that Keshav Nanda Bharti case versus the state of Kerala 1973, Supreme Court held that secularism is a basic structure of the constitution. That is an important part that cannot be replaced. It is a integral part of the constitution, right? So this was declared even before the amendment took place. So we already know that the secular aspect or tendencies in the constitution were already there. Even after that, in the Bommai versus Union of India case 94, Supreme Court further told that secularism means equal treatment of religions. Supreme Court basically explained the concept. Now please understand, what the articles mention is that the concept of secularism is different from that of West. It is absolutely correct. Because India has its own form of secularism. That is why India's secularism is also known as a positive form of secularism. On the other hand, the Western secularism is also known as a negative form of secularism. Please understand why. Supposingly, if you see over here, supposingly someone is, let me take my example. If I'm going to France, if I'm wearing this turban, according to the French authorities, it would be like I'm manifesting my religion in front of the public. So that means I'll be not allowed to do this. So do you realize that in the process of emphasizing the strict separation between the state and the religion, the state is basically trying to interfere in my personal matters also. That is why this secularism is known as a negative form of secularism. On the other hand, if you see the Indian secularism, this is the beauty of India. Whether I am wearing a turban, whether someone is wearing some other form of dress of their religion, they are allowed to wear whatever they want. They are not prohibited. They can easily profess and propagate their religion. So this is why here the state becomes a facilitator, not a restriction, unless and until it creates a ruxus or a problematic situation. Till that time, no, it will be a facilitator. That is why this is known as a positive form of secularism. This is a positive form. This is a negative form. Clear? This is something that you should know. This is what we learn from this particular article, and this can be asked in your papers, has been asked repeatedly earlier also, can be asked again. Okay? Now, this is a very, very important topic, especially for GS paper 3, which has economics, right? How to enable transit-oriented development. Now, this topic comes repeatedly in your newspapers, your magazines, articles. So we need to firstly understand what is transit-oriented development and what are its components, does it mean, what are the benefits, and what is Government of India basically doing with this respect or this concept. Let's understand this. Transit-oriented development. See, transit-oriented development means integrated urban places designed to bring people, activities, building, public spaces together with easy walking, cycling connections between them and near excellent transit service to the rest of the city. See, this is a concept where you are providing all these activities. See, where you are basically having an integrated system of urban planning. Urban planning does not simply mean having one road and buildings along with it. No, it is an integrated process because you have to make the cities or the urban places more livable. Simply having a concrete buildings over there does not make the place livable. You need to have those amenities, transport networks. If you are having, let us say, if you are having major highways, if you do not have other means of transport linking the major highways to the other parts, what will happen? There is going to be issues for the people who are staying there automatically. So we need an integrated urban space planning where we see we're bringing the people, the activities, building public spaces together, where there's space for walking, there's space for cycling, where there's space for movement of cars properly, along with it, good public transport and the private transport system also if there is there, but focus should be on the good quality public transport. If this system is followed, let us say new technologies are followed, let us say EV vehicles are integrated with this, what will happen? The place will become more livable, lesser pollution, lesser congestion, best use of the land would be made. So we are basically focusing, again repeating, an integrated urban planning designed to bring the people, buildings and public spaces together. It is not simply one patch of urban planning. It is also includes the urban sprawls that is there, need to be integrated along with the urban planning system, where we see that public space together with the walking cycling connections between them and near excellent transit system. Transit, that means from, let us say, you should not have only one form of transit, let us say public buses, no, along with it metros, public buses, other also modes of transport should be there. So there are choices for the people. Along with the choices, it is affordable. Along with it, to the last mile or the place where one wants to reach can easily reach. That will basically have a proper urban planning system. Now let us move and understand what are the components. Please see, these are the components of TOD. Last mile connectivity. What does the last mile connectivity mean? Supposingly, I am traveling from one place, let's say outskirts, to the interior of a city or a part of a city, right? Now, from that particular city, I have to go 10 kilometers also on the right side, let us say to my left or right. In that case, if I do not have a proper connectivity till the time I have to reach my destination, what will happen? I'll get more frustrated. I'll have to pay a lot of money to take a cab also for that matter. That means last mile connectivity means if I have to reach a particular place, one or the other form of transport system should be available. And that will only be available if proper networking is there, proper network of road is there. There is proper planning is also there is no encroachment. Only then that will be possible. The last mile connectivity. Inclusive habitat. Inclusive habitat means it is not that you make a city where only the rich can buy. It should have housings for everybody. Affordable housing also, who want to go for luxury housing, that also, and the best utilization of space should be there. Optimized densities. Now please understand, optimized densities means that we all know that the density in place the urban areas are there, it is high, right? Because there is vertical expansion in the cities rather than the simple horizontal expansion. So we need to understand that the density of the population should be managed in such a way that it should not become overpopulated or crowded. That is how it is very important to optimize the density of the population that is there. Now, this is not only with respect to the population, it is also with respect to the planning that is being done. More the number of flats, if it is haphazard, unplanned, will automatically lead to problems. So density with respect to the infrastructure as well as the population. Next is mixed land use. You need to have a proper use of the land use that is being done. So if a proper and a mixed land use is there, that will basically help in boosting the economy, proper utilization of the land. And we realize that sometimes wasteland is kept. That could have been used for some other reasons, let us say for solar panels or whatever. So mixed and proper land use is very important. Interconnected street network. This is very, very important. If you go to places like Chandigarh, you'll be realizing that they have a proper street and grid network where you can reach any place easily. Roads are wide, connectivity is there. So you realize that proper street network connectivity should all be there. If there is haphazard development, those streets becomes, let us say, less wider, and then you can even not move a cycle out of it. That is why interconnected proper street network is there. Multimodal integration. Multimodal means that you cannot rely simply on one means of transfer. Let us say not only the metro, rapid metro. You should have other services like cheaper, let us say the public bus transport network, even other cheaper means of other transport can be there. So we need to have a various kinds of transport that are linking each other also and competing with each other also, that gives us options, or the people options to choose whichever they want, and which can fulfill the idea of the last mile connectivity. Next is refill development. Refill development means sometimes you realize that there are a lot of buildings, but there is some open space, which where construction along with the sustainable development parameters could be done. Revamping it, properly developing that is known as the concept of refill development. That means proper utilization of the space of the land is important. Next is managed parking. You realize that in India, we see that earlier on just simply buildings used to be created and there was no option where to park when people used to park on the roads. Now the laws have been changed where if you have any commercial space, you need to have an underground parking or parking at least available there. Now, please understand, it is the duty of the government also to have multi-level parking systems or infrastructure available in the regions where you see the population density is high and where there are commercial hubs created. So, managed and proper parking system along with it is one of the major ingredients. For example, I'll give you a case study. If you go to from Dehradun to Mussoorie, you'll be realizing that in Mussoorie, everybody is taking the cars and there is a jam of 5 to 6 hours, right? So what the government of Uttarakhand now is planning is that they're going to have a large-scale, multi-level parking system in Dehradun itself, and from Dehradun there is a ropeway that is going to connect it to Mussoorie. That will boost the tourism also and decongest the regions of Mussoorie because of the traffic problems. So these are the various things through which you can basically improve your parking system. Informed Informal sector integration. Now, please understand the informal sector forms a major chunk of the economy. It is very important that we cannot negate them or neglect them. Properly training them, involving them in the economic activities also becomes a very, very important part. Next is street-oriented building. Now, see, proper street networks are there. Along with them, proper planning with respect to what type of buildings are going to be there, commercial spaces are going to be there. That has to be done because when it is along the street development, definitely it helps us to better manage things also because it is along the streets the development are taking place. Obviously, there will be regions where it would be for the residential part, then other would be for the commercial part, but it basically focuses on proper connectivity and developments taking place along the arteries. Next is traffic management and calming. Obviously, when we talk about managed parking, we realize all these things integrate to have a proper traffic management system where you include technology, where you include basic awareness among the people that they need to follow proper traffic rules also. So these are the various dimensions of the components. If I try to see it from another aspect, what are the Todd principles? There are certain principles. What we have done already, this is basically a sum up of that. See, walk, that means people should have a walking space. Cycle, you should have cycling spaces. Connectivity through, let us say, multimodal transport and various street networking. uh, Transit, again, multimodal transit concept, mix land use along with it. Mixed modal system should be there. Densify, or we should have an optimal density of the population in the buildings. Compact, and that means you should have the optimum utilization of the resources that are available. That is shift from the traditional mode of thinking and systems that we have been doing, which is basically crumbling the urban infrastructure, and move towards a transit oriented development. These are the principles. Now please understand what are the benefits. Improved public transportation, reduced congestion, reduced pollution, improved quality of life, economic development, and increasing housing choices. So if those things are implemented, we'll be having these benefits that are there. Now, what is the government doing with respect, or government has taken certain initiatives? Yes, the government has taken. In in play in let us say, when reading these benefits and all, even the government has brought out various policies. We see National Transit Oriented Development Policy 2070. Now you realize many people will think, sir, this policy is mentioned. Let us assume next year this policy comes in your examination. You'll be realizing, sir, this came in 2017. How can we remember certain facts of 2017? Remember that it is in the newspaper now. You have to prepare current affairs at least 1.5 years properly. So this is in the news now. Whether it was old or not doesn't make any relevance. It is current for you now. So understanding these transit-oriented development and the policies becomes very important for you. Metro Rail Policy 2017, Urban Infrastructure Development Fund, Multimodal Transport Unit. This hub. So these are basically those dimensions which are moving or aiming towards the transit-oriented development. Let's move ahead. Now, this is an editorial, a very interesting one. I have basically written a lot of stuff on the board itself. Make sure when you are reading this, you have your editorial in front of you, right? See, what is the author taking about? He's talking about weighing in on our business as usual with China. See, in this particular article or editorial, he has given both sides. He basically says that we realize that there have been a shift in the relationships of late. Are the relations with China improving? Or what should the relations with China be? Because we realize that China is a very important player in the global economy. You require its funds also in a way, but on the other hand, due to the geopolitical aspects, we realize there are certain restrictions also imposed in the relations or trade relations with China. But is it worth it or not? How should we take China's policies with respect to India, as we see that there are still border disputes going on? There are still certain issues, or multiple issues for that matter, pending. There's a lot of trade deficit that is there. So overall, he analyzes the positive dimension, certain dimension, the issues that are coming. Along with it, he talks about that there needs to be a balance of the relationships, right? Now see what are the various dimensions that he basically deals or talks about. In the introductory passage or the paragraph, he talks about, he questions, are the India's relationship with thawing, that means those relationship that was strained, is there any ease in that, or is there any normalization in the relationship taking place? So he says, see, there is an appearance that has come in various news articles which basically makes this particular writer think that there is, let us say, improvement in the relationships. Why? Because he says that both, especially India also needs China and China also needs India for that matter in various spheres, whether it is especially with respect to economy when we talk about. Then the thinker says, is there a need for delinkage? Delinkage in what aspects? See, first is related to the border and the overall relationships. Related to border and overall relationship. What does it mean? See, the major problem right now we are facing with China are the border disputes. So the thinker basically questions, should we delink one issue? That means, okay, the border issue is there. We know that it is there. But shall we delink that and treat that aspect separately and deal with the aspect of economy and other dimensions separately? So this is a question that is coming in the mind of the thinker itself. So now let's move ahead and see. See, with respect to these questions that are coming, the thinker says that even Dr. Jaishankar basically in his various discussions talked about certain things, right? Firstly, he said, see, 75% of the disengagement problems have been resolved. Now, this is a very important statement itself from the Minister of External Affairs. The minister mentions that 75% of the issues with respect to the disengagement problems that were across the border have been resolved. But he says that border militarization problem still prevails. Now, this itself has two parts. First is, okay, on a positive end, we realize that certain problems with respect to the border disputes are on a positive way. But Chinese military being on the border and India's military also being there in order to counter that is there, and border militarization issue is still there. So the scenario comes with a double-edged sword. At both sides, on a positive side also and a negative side also. On the other hand, we see that the issue of the Depsang plain and the Demchok controversy that had taken place or is continuing between India and China still prevails. So we realize that there are still issues that are bone of contention between China and India, and that is still continuing. As we move ahead, similar explanation has been made by the writer. Now, what he says, now he comes on to the next part. He sees China from an economic angle now. Please understand, you would have realized that because of the border disputes, we had basically put certain impositions and restricted certain trade or imports from, let us say, China. Though still the import is going on, there were certain restrictions for this timing that were imposed. Now, what the economic survey mentions has been quoted here by the writer. He says that economic survey 24 says that that flow via investment from the China should be our motive, not the import from China. What does it mean? He says that economic survey is telling that if certain investments are being made by the Chinese company, that should be allowed. That will basically help India. But we shall find out ways to restrict the import from China. Because when the investment comes, that is going to help in the regional development. When it comes to with respect to importing goods, then that is not in favor of India's strategic benefit. That is why the economic survey is being quoted here, where it says that, okay, investment is fine, let the investment come to India from the Chinese company, but not the imports. Imports again, it doesn't mean that you can completely go away with the imports, because already there is a lot of trade deficit and import is there. But what he's trying to focus is that focus on the investment from the China. Now, as we move ahead, please understand. He talks about, the thinker talks, move ahead and talks about, see, diplomatic relations and diplomatic, let us say, background talks have been focusing that there needs to be a restoration of the normal ties. You would have realized that when the relations between China and India deteriorated, it basically impacted the various industries in India. You would have realized that the automobile industry, especially they have the chips with respect to the screens that are placed. Various Hyundai, let us say even the Indian companies also have those chips that are important from China. So there was a lot of problem with respect to the automobile industry. Along with it, various other industries which have their components that are imported from China. Let us say the air conditioning industry, which has a lot of, let us say, components that are imported from China, suffered a lot because of the issues that were actually related to the border, which impacted the economic aspect also. So what are the diplomats or diplomatic channels saying? They say that it is important that we should move towards restoration of the normal ties. Now, see, the author is basically trying to give you the various views and ideas that have been mentioned over here. On the other hand, now please understand, he also mentions the other aspect of the story. He said, on one hand, there is need or demand for restoration of the ties, but along with it, please understand that China is not prepared to accept the various demands of India. Now, please understand that. First is we go ahead, please understand, there is a trade deficit. Now, India has been focusing that we need to lessen the imports and increase the export. But when it comes to India exporting to China, India has an excellence in the pharmaceutical sector. India has an excellence in the information technology sector. In that case, China becomes a hindrance. It does not allow these sectors to come to China and show its actual talent, because these are the major areas where India can benefit from China also by investing there. And for that matter, we can earn a lot of revenue, but China restricts that. So what happens is that the trade deficit slowly has been increasing, which has increased to greater than $105 billion in 2023. Now, this is also a concern where India has always repeatedly told that we need to work on the trade deficits, where China has been very adamant that yes, we will allow, but there have been restrictions on the side of China. Second, the second thing over here mentioned is that China is a hub of value chain, right? Value chain, networking. It has been a hub for a value chain. It would refrain India from becoming so. Did you realize that during the Corona time, various companies started moving from China towards India? Now, China itself strategically does not want India to be a powerhouse with respect to the value chain, or let us say a hub of the manufacturing companies over here. Now, this is a geopolitical game that China always plays. And that is why this is also a thing that is being seen with respect to, you would have realized with respect to Tesla also. Tesla had to come to India, but back channel talks basically led Tesla from investing in India and moving towards China. It does not want India to become a power hub or powerhouse with respect to multiple national companies coming here also. Now, in this case, it is very important. Again, diplomacy, international relations with those companies also, and getting the investment in India done is also very, very important. So this is where again China is acting as a speed breaker for India. Next, over here we see that China dominating the future industries. Now, this is again a very important thing. You would have realized that rare earth minerals, when we talk about, which are a very important ingredient of the semiconductor industries and even your batteries, 80% of the rare earth metals have a potential scope of being present in or supplier are is China, 80%. That is where it creates a dependence of countries like even United States, even India and other countries on China. Now, if that particular country, let us say, imposes certain restrictions on exporting those minerals to other countries like India, and itself creates a condition for the companies that you will have to manufacture only in China and then only you can use our products. So what will happen? That will make China, as it is a domination towards the future industries that are there, let us say electric sector. That is again a place where in China will pose a challenge for India because of the dependencies that are created. So next we realize that when we talked about investment from China, the Economic Survey 2024 basically mentions that you have the investment from China, but restrict the import. But over here, again, the author very smartly mentions over here that there is a scrutiny mechanism of the outward flow of investment. That means any investment that is going out from China or the companies of Chinese company investing outside, they're very well or very intricately scrutinized so that the investment doesn't go out, and in fact it is majorly the indigenous development of or manufacturing industries are focused on. So that would restrict what the economic survey is pointing out. So we realized, or what we have seen in all these things are, we need to realize that okay, there are border issues, okay, there are strategic issues, okay, India is a global and a rising power, and China will try one or the other hand to restrict it. But at the last, the writer basically mentions that because China itself is a major player in the world economy and the geopolitics, we cannot neglect it. We need to reap the maximum benefits out of it without compromising our interests. So there has to be a balance of the relations, and those relations in a way that it benefits India the most. This is what is the core idea of the article. Now, will you realize that there are various problems, benefits, issues that have been mentioned in this particular article, the editorial? It is a very interesting editorial. Along with it, it gives you various dimensions also. So this was the analysis of the editorial that we have done for 24th September 2024. This is the QR code for the uh, Telegram account. You can please subscribe to this. You can get the PDF of this particular, what I've written on the board in this particular group along with the other stuff. Let us go to the first page. This is what the current affairs for 2024. I'm Harpreet Singh signing off from here for today's current affair. We'll meet tomorrow, deal with the other topics comprehensively, analyze and give you a right direction. We are not here to overload you with all sort of information. No, we are here to tell you what is important for the civil services, to help you understand what these topics basically mean, help you analyze, develop the ability to think. That is what is the need for the civil services examination. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care and Jai Hind.